The release of the Auschwitz report is headline news throughout the country. These news reports explaining to the American people what Auschwitz was and what happened there are followed up by op-eds, by columns about Auschwitz and what America has to do in the wake of all of this information.
And the fact that it's released by the War Refugee Board. It's not being released by a Jewish organization. It's not being released. Rabbi Stephen Wise says it's coming from a governmental source. It's much harder to dismiss it.
That is a clip from the latest project from Ken Burns titled The U.S. and the Holocaust. The three-part, 6-hour documentary series examines the response by the United States to the atrocities committed by the Nazis. And Ken Burns joins us now, along with the documentary's co-director, Lynn Novick. Good morning to you both. It's great to see you. So, Ken, boy, there's a lot in here that I think people didn't realize or maybe had forgotten, because even before we sent a generation of young men to Europe to liberate that continent and defeat the Nazis, there was a lot going on back at home. So where do you pick up the story?
Well, we actually start, decades before the story gets bad, and that is with our own culpability or the things that contribute to our own ability to act in the face of what's going on in the Holocaust. That clip you showed, it's way too late. 3/4 of the people who are going to be murdered by the Nazis have been murdered, and we don't really have a boot on the ground. Or if we do, we don't have a plane that can get there. Or if we do have a plane that can get there, then what are you going to do? Bomb the rail lines at Auschwitz that they'll replace a day later? We've got a history of taking care of our native populations, dispossessing them of their land, murdering them, moving them onto reservations, which Hitler loved. We've got a history of racism. We've got a history of anti-Semitism, which is worldwide. We've got an anti-immigration law that has gone into effect that's shut the golden door that the Statue of Liberty had been from 1870 to 1920. And we've got a depression, and we've got eugenics, which is a pseudoscience suggesting there's a hierarchy of races. And there's, of course, not. There's only one race, the human race. And into this mix, you have politicians, you have government officials, you have Congress, and more importantly, you have the American people who have zero interest in letting in any refugees. And so we let in 225,000 people, more than any other sovereign nation, but we could have let in 5 or 10 times as many and done something a little bit more than what the indifference is that we showed across the board. And we look to blame one person, but it's the culpability is across the board.
Lynn, years in the process of making this film, and I'm wondering, given all the surprises that are in the film, all the shocks that are in the film, and yet. Watching it before it began to be televised Sunday night, I had seen the film. And then Sunday morning, I had seen on the news clips pictures of the rally that President Trump had in Ohio, former President Trump had in Ohio Saturday night. And I'm wondering now that you've made this film, people are going to see this film, has it gone through your minds, both of you, that we have something maybe in the making right in front of us?
Well, we started working on this film along with our partner, co-director Sarah Botstein, way back in 2015. It was a very different world. And as we've been developing the project and working on it, and it's coming to fruition now, the events happening around us just began to reverberate with the story we were telling louder and louder and louder. And so we're seeing some of the same trends towards authoritarianism and white supremacy and hate speech and bigotry and marginalization of people and lack of faith in the rule of law and the peaceful transfer of power, free and fair elections. These are sort of the warning signs of creeping authoritarianism that we saw back in the 1930s in Germany, for sure. And there were dangers of that happening here as well. It was a very scary time, and we're seeing these echoes today, and it's very concerning. There's just no getting around that.
Mike, we were planning to bring this out in 2023, sort of comfortably doing, but we accelerated the production just because we felt these rhymes, as Mark Twain might say, with what was going on. Every film of ours rhymes in the present, but nothing like this. And so we moved it up so that we could join a conversation. And look, we have to be really clear. The United States is not responsible for the Holocaust. The Holocaust is not going on right now. But as Lynn is saying, we have this authoritarian impulses in the human. Even Jefferson in the Declaration says we're disposed to suffer tyranny, right? Human beings. And so it means that an experiment in democracy is an extra effort of humanity. And so I borrow from Deborah Lipstadt, the great Holocaust scholar in our film, who says the time to stop a genocide is before it happens. Mike, the time to save a democracy is before it's lost, and that requires all good people to come to the aid of their country. I don't mean to sound cliched. I think there's lots of smoke, and it may be time to just pull the fire alarm and say, let's work at free and fair elections. Let's work at peaceful transfer of power. Let's work at an independent judiciary. Let's work at, because all of these signals here are really clear and distinct, and you can watch it bit by bit by bit by bit, and that's what authoritarians do. What can I get away with? Oh, I got away with that. Oh, I took the Rhineland. Oh, I can get away with this. I can take Austria. Oh, I got away with that. I can take the Sudetenland. Oh, I can take all of Czechoslovakia. Okay, now let's move into Poland and let's move into the East. And he wanted, he being Hitler, wanted to conquer the wild East, which he didn't consider its people, Jews and Slavs and Orthodox Christians, meaningful, just as we had. He admired the way we had taken over the Wild West and marginalized Native peoples and murdered them and put them, as he said, into cages. It was necessary murder, but it showed the virility of the United States, that kind of action. So, you know, at what point do you just say, well, you know, don't be alarmist? You know, at what point do you say, we have a republic, as we talked last time, that Benjamin Franklin said, if you can keep it? Well, we've gone 246 years. Let's make sure we keep it.